It is not your business where I go. That's what my wife said to me. Not whispered, not muttered under her breath the way people say things they don't fully mean. She said it loudly, clearly, like she'd been saving it, like she wanted it to land. And it did. 6 words that told me everything I'd spent 3 months trying to confirm. My name is Matt Riordan. I'm a structural engineer. I build things that are supposed to hold weight. I calculate load-bearing points for a living. I figure out exactly how much pressure something can take before it fails. Turns out I was doing the same thing in my own marriage, and I just hadn't admitted it yet. This is the story of the night my wife screamed those words at me, walked out that door, and ended up stranded at a frozen lakehouse at midnight, calling my phone over and over while I lay in the dark and watched it ring. I want you to understand something before I tell you what I did. I want you to understand the kind of man I was trying not to become. She got dressed like I wasn't in the room. That's where this really starts. Not with the screaming, not with the midnight calls. It starts on a Saturday evening, with me sitting on the edge of our bed in my work clothes, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, watching my wife move through our bedroom like I was a lamp, like I was part of the furniture she'd stopped seeing. She stood at the mirror and curled her hair in sections, the way she only did when she actually cared about where she was going. She spritzed perfume, once, then again, which she never did for casual nights. And then she stepped into the black dress. Not the comfortable one she wore to birthday dinners with friends. The dress. The one with the open back. The one she bought on a solo trip to the city 8 months ago that I'd never actually seen her wear. I set my coffee down on the nightstand slowly. I didn't want to make noise. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to break whatever spell I was watching, because some part of me already knew that if I looked at this too directly, I'd have to deal with what it meant. "You look nice," I said. She didn't turn around, just made a small sound in the back of her throat. The kind of sound that means I heard you without meaning thank you. "Where are you going?" I asked. She clipped in her second earring, tilted her head to check it, and finally looked at me. Not directly, but at my reflection in the mirror. There's a difference. Looking at a man's reflection is a way of looking at him without really seeing him. "Out with the girls," she said. I nodded once. Here's what she didn't know. 3 days earlier, I had found a sticky note in the back pocket of her jeans while doing laundry. A name, Osteria 44, and a time. I'd looked it up. Candlelit Italian place, 40 minutes from our house, the kind of restaurant you don't go to with girlfriends. I hadn't said anything. I just folded the note back up and put it in the manila envelope I kept in my nightstand drawer, the one I'd started filling, quietly, without panic, the way you prepare for a storm you can already smell coming. She grabbed her keys off the dresser. Her perfume moved through the room as she passed me. The door clicked shut. I sat in the silence for a full minute, maybe longer. The coffee was cold. The room felt different with her gone. The way a room feels after something important has just been decided without you. Then I picked up my phone from the nightstand and did something I still can't fully explain. I opened the camera. I took a photo of the empty room, the rumpled bedspread, the curl of perfume still visible in the dressing table mirror, the second earring backing she'd dropped and left on the floor. No caption. I just took it. I think I needed proof that this was real, that I wasn't misreading this, that what I was watching night after night was exactly what it looked like. I put my phone down and stayed at the ceiling. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I was doing the thing I'd trained myself to do on engineering sites when a structure shows its first signs of failure. I was calculating. I was figuring out how much weight was still left to hold, and how much longer it would hold it. After she left, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't call anyone. I went to the nightstand and I opened the drawer. The manila envelope was unremarkable, the kind you'd use to mail a utility bill. Cream-colored, slightly bent at one corner from where I'd pushed it too far back. I'd started filling it exactly 92 days ago. I know the number because I counted once, late on a night I couldn't sleep, sitting at my kitchen table at 3 a.m. doing the math the way you do when your mind refuses to shut off. 92 days of staying quiet. 92 days of watching and cataloging and telling myself I needed to be sure before I said anything. Because the worst thing a man can do, the thing I was most afraid of, was blow up his marriage over a suspicion and be wrong. I laid everything out on the bedspread like I was reviewing blueprints. The Osteria 44 receipt came first. Dinner for two, a Tuesday night in November, $186 including a bottle of wine we'd never discussed. Blaire had told me she was at her sister Kara's that night, helping her move a bookshelf. I texted her at 9 p.m. to ask if she wanted me to come help. She'd said they were almost done. The receipt was time-stamped 9:34 p.m. Next to it, I placed a matchbook. Dark green, gold lettering, a bar called the Meridian. I'd never heard of it. I found it in the inside pocket of Blaire's winter coat when I was taking it to the dry cleaner in December. I didn't say anything then either. I just put it in the envelope. Then the screenshot. I'd taken it from my own phone. Blaire's location, shared with me through the app we'd set up 2 years ago after her car broke down on the highway and I'd had to drive 4 hours in the rain to find her. We'd set up location sharing together, laughing about it, calling it our old married couple system. I don't think she remembered it was still active. On a Wednesday in January, she told me she had a late yoga class. The location pin sat 12 miles in the wrong direction, stationary, for 2 hours. I laid all 3 items out side by side and looked at them. This was the part that got me. I wasn't shaking. There was no dramatic moment where the room spun or my chest caved in. I just looked at the evidence of my own humiliation spread across our bedspread and felt something cold and clarifying move through me. Like a door had been open in a warm house for months, and I'd finally just accepted that I was cold. My phone buzzed. Derek, my oldest friend, texting. You good, man? You've been real off lately. Talk to me. I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed, never better. Sent it. Folded everything back into the envelope. Slid it into the drawer. Closed it softly. I wasn't collecting evidence to confront her. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't building a case so I could stand in our kitchen one night and throw it all on the table and demand answers. I was collecting evidence so that when the moment finally came, and I knew it was coming, I would not second-guess myself. I would not let her talk me out of what I knew. I would not become a man who stood in his own kitchen arguing about receipts while his dignity bled out on the floor. I knew what that looked like. I'd watched it my whole childhood. My father, Thomas Riordan, was the best man I ever knew. I mean that without any softness or exaggeration. He was patient, generous, funny in the dry, quiet way that only reveals itself over time. He loved my mother with the kind of steadiness that should have been a gift and somehow became a weapon she used against him. She spent 22 years treating his loyalty like a leash. And he stayed. He shrank. He apologized for things he hadn't done because keeping the peace felt more urgent than keeping himself. He died at 61. Heart failure. The medical kind, though I've always thought the other kind had something to do with it too. At the funeral, his brother pulled me aside near the back of the church, gripped my arm, and said something I have never forgotten. Your father was the best man I ever knew. She just never let him be. I was 26 years old when he said that. I built my entire adult life around those 11 words. So no, I was not going to stand in a kitchen waving a receipt. I was going to be ready. I was going to be sure. And when the time came, I was going to walk out of my own story the same way my father never got to, with my head up and my hands steady, and not a single word I'd regret. I turned off the bedroom light. I went to sleep. She left her phone on the counter unlocked while she showered. I wasn't looking for anything. I was making coffee, and the screen lit up on its own, a notification sliding across like it had somewhere to be. Gym trainer. Can't wait for the weekend smirking face. I stood very still. Then I picked it up. The contact name was Gym Trainer. She hadn't even been creative about it. 14 months of messages, right there. The whole architecture of it. The inside jokes I wasn't part of. The restaurant names I recognized from receipts in my envelope, the photographs I will not describe, and at the very bottom, the most recent exchange, confirming a weekend trip to a lakehouse property he owned 2 hours outside the city. This weekend, she told me she was going to a work wellness retreat. I read for exactly 2 minutes. Then I set the phone down in the precise spot it had been. I'm an engineer. I noticed placement, and I walked to the living room and sat down. I thought about my father, about the way he used to sit at the kitchen table after arguments, very still, like a man trying to remember who he was before things got loud. I heard the shower shut off. I heard her moving around upstairs. A few minutes later she came down, picked up her phone without looking at me, and said cheerfully, "Hungry?" I was thinking pasta. I looked up at her. "Sure," I said, and I smiled. I don't fully understand where that smile came from. Maybe from the same place that makes engineers stay calm when they've just spotted a crack in a foundation. Because panicking doesn't fix anything. Knowing does. I already knew everything. I heard it by accident. That's important to me. I need you to know I wasn't standing at a door with a glass pressed against the wood. I'd come home early from a site visit, walked in quietly the way you do when your mind is still half on a job, and heard Blaire's voice in the backyard. Animated. Confessional. The specific tone people use when they think no one important is listening. I stopped in the kitchen. "Kara, he's so stable, you know? Like everything is so predictable. Declan actually makes me feel something." I looked down at my hands on the kitchen counter. These hands had fixed the leak under our sink at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday because she'd mentioned it was dripping and I couldn't sleep knowing she'd hear it all night. These hands had driven 4 hours in the rain to reach her when her car died on the highway and she'd called me crying. These hands had held her at her grandmother's funeral until her breathing slowed. Too stable. Like it was a diagnosis. Like dependability was a character flaw I should have caught earlier. "I'm not leaving, Matt. I'm not stupid. I just need this right now." I stepped back to the front door, opened it, closed it loudly. "Babe, I'm home." I called out, my voice easy and warm. A beat. The sound of her ending the call quickly. "In the backyard," she called back. Bright as a new penny. I walked out smiling. She was sitting in the patio chair looking completely composed, phone face down on the armrest, and she smiled back at me. The full smile, the one I used to think was only mine. I kissed the top of her head. "Good day?" I asked. "Really good," she said. I went inside to start dinner. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Friday when my phone rang. Number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Matt, it's Kara." I closed my laptop slowly. Blaire's younger sister had never once called me directly in 3 years of marriage. We got along, birthday dinners, Christmas, the occasional group text, but we weren't close the way that produces late-night phone calls. Her voice was doing something unsteady that I recognized as someone who had made a decision and was terrified of it. "I'm listening," I said. She told me about Declan. The messages, the dinners, the long stretch of something that had been quietly dismantling my marriage for 14 months. None of it was new information, but I let her talk because I could hear how much it was costing her. Then she said, "They're going away together this weekend. He has a lake house." She told everyone it's a work retreat. 3 seconds of silence. "Where's the lake house, Kara?" She hesitated. I didn't push, didn't raise my voice. I just waited with the particular patience of a man who has already decided what he's going to do and simply needs one more coordinate. She told me. I wrote the address on a sticky note, pressed it flat on my desk, stated it. I did not go there. I had no intention of driving to a lake house to find my wife with another man. That wasn't the kind of story I was going to tell about myself. I just needed the address to confirm that every single thing I'd suspected for 92 days was exactly, completely, humiliatingly real. It was. I folded the sticky note, put it in the manila envelope. Then I called my lawyer and told him to move the timeline up. Saturday morning. Blaire had a bag packed by 8 a.m. She was warm that morning, warmer than she'd been in weeks, moving around the kitchen with an ease I recognized as the particular lightness of someone whose guilt has been temporarily outrun by excitement. She made coffee without being asked. She made enough for both of us. She kissed me on the cheek. "I'll be back Sunday night. Don't forget the plants." I wrapped both hands around my mug. "Have a good trip." She smiled, shouldered her bag. At the front door she paused and looked back at me, and I saw it. Just for a second. Something moving across her face that wasn't quite guilt and wasn't quite tenderness but was somewhere uncomfortably between the two. Like she'd almost said something true and then thought better of it. Then it passed. "Bye, Matt." The door closed softly this time. No slam. She was in a good mood. I sat with my coffee in the quiet house and let the silence settle around me. Then I called my lawyer. She's gone for the weekend. Can you have the first filing ready by Monday morning? I'll have it on your desk. Thank you. I hung up, finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, set it upside down on the drying rack the way I always did, the small domestic habit of a man who believed in keeping things orderly. Then I went upstairs, changed my clothes, and called Derek. It was going to be a good Saturday. Derek asked me once, years ago, what I'd do if I ever found out someone I loved had been lying to me. I'd said something measured and mature about communication and giving people the benefit of the doubt. Looking back, I think I was describing the man I hoped I was, not the man I actually am. We went to the driving range. We ate at the burger place Blaire always called too greasy. I ordered the double. I ate every bite. We talked about Derek's new apartment, his situation with a woman from his office, the game on Sunday, normal things, the full warm texture of a life that didn't have a crack running through it. Then Derek lowered his club and looked at me sideways. You seem lighter, man. Like, genuinely lighter. What's going on? I lined up my shot. Let's just say I spent a long time trying not to become my father. He waited. Turns out I was already nothing like him. I just needed to remember that. I swung. The ball arced out clean and high and landed exactly where I'd aimed. We didn't talk about it again. That night I went home, made a real dinner, watched the game with my feet up, and fell asleep on the couch at 10:30 p.m. with the TV still on. My phone was on silent. 2 hours away, at a lake house on a private road, the temperature was dropping toward 14 degrees. A leased Range Rover sat dead in a gravel driveway. A gas heating system was losing its fight against the cold. I didn't know any of that yet. I was asleep. I want to tell you what was happening at that lake house while I slept, because you need to understand exactly how the night unraveled. Declan's Range Rover had been making a sound when they arrived, something low and irregular under the hood that he'd waved off. By 9 p.m. it wouldn't start at all. His phone hit 4% battery an hour later and died completely before he could reach roadside assistance. No cell signal at the lake. Nearest town, 22 miles down an unlit back road. They'd had wine with dinner. Neither of them could drive. The lake house heating system was old, a gas unit installed sometime in the late 90s that kicked and groaned and produced just enough warmth to be convincing until it didn't. By 11 p.m. it was losing. The temperature outside had dropped to 14 degrees. No neighbors in winter. Private road. No passing cars. Blaire found one bar of signal by walking to the end of the dock, the cold coming off the lake in sheets. She called Kara first. No answer. She called a co-worker. Straight to voicemail. Then she stood there on that dark dock, her phone screen the only light for what felt like miles, and she scrolled to the name that had always meant safe. The name she called from that highway in the rain. The name she called the night her grandmother died. The name she'd been quietly dismantling for 14 months. She pressed call. 2 hours away, on my couch, my phone lit up on the coffee table. Silent. 12:17 a.m. I was in bed when the first call came. I know the exact time because I looked. The numbers burned pale blue in the dark. Blaire, calling. I lay still and watched it ring. It stopped. I stayed at the ceiling. 12:19 a.m. again. Blaire, calling. I sat up, picked up the phone, held it. My thumb sat above the green button and I genuinely thought, about answering. Because whatever else was true, she was my wife. 3 years. The Barcelona conversation, her grandmother's funeral, 4 hours in the rain. Then I thought about Jim Traynor. I thought about his just too stable. I thought about the dress she put on like I wasn't in the room. I thought about 6 words delivered clearly across a kitchen. It is not your business where I go. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. It buzzed again. Again. 6 calls across 11 minutes. Each one a small vibration I could feel through the mattress. I got up, went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, stood in the dark and drank it slowly while my phone buzzed in the other room. My father would have answered. My father would have answered and driven through the dark, and never once been thanked for it. I know because I watched him do the version of that for 22 years. I finished my water, rinsed the glass. I went back to bed. I slept. 7:14 a.m., a number I didn't recognize. I answered on the second ring. Is this Matthew Riordan? A man's voice, steady, Official. This is Deputy Harlan, Keswick County Sheriff's Department. I want you to know first, she's okay. We have a Blaire Riordan here. She was found at the end of a private dock around 2 a.m. by a couple who were ice fishing in the area. Mild hypothermia. She's warming up. She's been trying to reach you. A long silence. Thank you, Deputy, I said. Where is she? I wrote down the address on the same notepad where, less than 48 hours ago, I'd taken down the address of the lakehouse. I looked at both addresses for a moment. Then I got up, washed my face, got dressed, and drove to Keswick County. 2 hours. I drove it without music, without podcasts, without calling anyone. Just the road and the early gray light and the specific silence of a man who has made a decision and is carrying it cleanly. I was afraid. I want to say that plainly. When the deputy said mild hypothermia, something moved through my chest that had nothing to do with the divorce paperwork sitting on my lawyer's desk. I was afraid because whatever she had done, I had loved her genuinely, and that doesn't switch off like a light. But I didn't confuse fear with obligation. There's a difference between loving someone and rebuilding a life around someone who doesn't value it. My father never learned that difference. I was about to prove that I had. She was sitting on a cot in a full blanket when I walked in. Hair tangled, face pale and stripped clean of everything she usually put between herself and the world. She looked younger than I'd seen her look in years. She looked like the woman I'd met at a rooftop party 6 years ago, before I knew anything, before she knew what she was capable of. She saw me and her face broke completely. Matt. I held up one hand. Not angry. Just, wait. I sat down across from her. I looked at her for a long moment, long enough to make sure I was going to say this right. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Okay. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a folded envelope on the seat beside her. She looked down at it. Kara told me about the lakehouse, I said quietly. I've known about Declan for 3 months. The dinners, the calls, the contact name. I watched her eyes close. I didn't say anything because I needed to be ready. Matt, please. You told me it was none of my business where you go. I stood up, buttoned my jacket. You were right. It wasn't. I looked at her one final time, not with anger, not with satisfaction, with something that was equal parts grief and relief, and honest about being both. I called you a car. It'll be here in 10 minutes. I walked out into the cold morning. My hands were steady. My chest was clear. I got in my car. I drove home alone, 2 hours back through the same gray light. And for the first time in 3 years, I turned the music up as loud as I wanted it.